Welcome to the Chasing Goalpost podcast, where we share personal finance, investing, and business insights with all of you, a community of active income earners looking to achieve your own goalposts. Now, we've got a unique episode here today, but before we get started on that, as always, we've got to walk through a few quick disclaimers. And those disclaimers are: the content provided on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as advice. Before making any decisions, we strongly recommend consulting with a qualified professional who can assess your individual situation. The information provided may not be suitable for your specific situation, and reliance on any information is at your own risk. And a full overview of our disclaimers can be accessed via our website at www.chasinggoalpost.com/disclaimers. Well, let's dive right in. So today we have a very unique episode, as we mentioned. How many of us, quick question for the audience, would move our life to a Caribbean island? Now, I think a lot of us would say, hey, palm trees and beaches, that's pretty appealing on a vacation. But how many of us would actually follow through? Well, today's guest did just that. After growing up, starting a family, and building a successful career in Minnesota, he moved his family to Puerto Rico to enjoy island life. Dan Schreck, welcome to the Chasing Goalpost podcast.
Thanks for having me, buddy. How are things in Minnesota?
Well, we are this weekend. We're hitting 60, so we're probably not Puerto Rico weather, but we're getting there.
That is incredible for February or March now.
Yeah, we've turned the page here into March. So, well, let's get after it here. Everybody's story is unique, Dan. You obviously grew up in Minnesota. Maybe give us a bit of background on where you grew up, a bit about your family dynamic, how that shaped you, and where you are today.
Sure. Grew up in Shakopee, Minnesota, and was the oldest of three kids, very middle class. I think our family dynamic growing up was kind of very average. We had two W-2 parents that worked really hard and taught me a lot about living well beneath your means. And I think a lot of that has stuck with me to date, and we'll get into a lot more.
Great. Well, let's start with your active income career then. I mean, what does that look like to date for you?
So I have been in sales ever since college. I do supply chain technology, and ever since college, I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Went to school, went to a 4-year college that was fairly expensive, like a liberal arts college. And with that, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with that. And so coming out of college, I had quite a bit of debt, didn't know what I wanted to get into, but one thing I had learned in college was this. It was that out in the business world, I don't care what role you're in one of two roles. You're either in sales or sales support. And so I figured, well, on my path to being an entrepreneur, I might as well go learn how to sell. And so from there, I had actually heard that the toughest type of sales is copier sales. So right out of school, I looked at doing copier sales and looked at a couple jobs there. But while I was, pursuing copier sales, I found this job in supply chain technology, and it seemed like a pretty good opportunity. And when I did that, I went in. I remember the interview to this day. Went in, talked with them, and said, "You know what? This seems pretty like a great opportunity. Why don't we do this? Could you put me with your best guy and have him teach me everything he knows?" And so that it just so happened that their best guy needed some help, and I was able to team up with him and learn the business really quickly. And we kind of structured it like I would be prospecting, finding new opportunities, and then I would bring those to him. He'd help me close them, and I'd learn through that. And then he would have a lot of day-to-day work that he would pass off to me, and I would, help him with that, and also kind of learn some of the ins and outs of the business that way. And I think that helped me ramp up my active income career as a salesperson in supply chain technology a lot faster than if I just would have started all by myself. And because of that, we established kind of this. That was like the pinnacle of this mentorship program that we started at our company and that we used for many, many years afterwards, because it just worked. And so the role is 100% commission salesperson. So I've learned to view it over all these years as kind of having my own business within a company. The sky's the limit. The more you sell, the more you earn. The business that you bring in is the business that you will keep serving and taking care of for many, many years. I still have some customers. I have a lot of customers that, go back with me. It's been 18 years now, or almost 18 years. And I've had some for that entire time. So.
No, that's interesting. Just so the audience understands, how long have you been in that industry now?
Ever since college. So it has been 18 years, and it's all I know. All I know from an active income perspective. But I'm glad that I got into it, and I joined a very small company when first starting, and so it was very entrepreneurial in the fact that I had a voice in that company and could, kind of scratch that itch, if you will, to be giving advice and my thoughts and where I think we should invest and how we should streamline processes and things, and also be, the salesperson who has his own business within it. That was a pretty good fit, short of having my own business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like you were quite empowered in your role, and I appreciate you sharing the context on the commission only, because for a lot of people, that's a bit of a scary jump, right? When you say, hey, you make as much as you bring in, and if you don't bring in anything, you don't make anything, and vice versa, right? Sky's the limit. So it's a bit of the feast or famine mentality, but I think that context for others is pretty rewarding. It could be.
Yeah, very much so. It allows you, again, if you wanted to work 24/7, you could make millions of dollars, and but you're not forced to do that either. So I highly recommend that if you're entrepreneurial and you're not sure exactly what sort of business you want to be in. And my story is that I've been doing this for the past 18 years, and really just learning to invest on the side as I've gone and grown in this. So I'm building up this, active income business, but also my parents instilled in me living beneath your means. And so that affords you with, some access to invest and to, kind of grow in that mentality too. So I should say, when I started with my company, I think we had 8 or 9 employees, and we've gone on this. We were privately held, and we were privately held up until 4 years ago. So in the first, large chunk of my career, we had grown that business to probably 60 or 70 employees, something like that. And then we started. We got acquired by private equity, and I've gotten a lot of experience with private equity since then.
Well, let's save the private equity here for a few minutes down the road here, but
Sounds
let's
good.
back up to the move from Minnesota to Puerto Rico. So how does that opportunity come about? And the second part of that question is, how has your family responded to the move?
Yeah, it's a heck of a story. I think it all goes back to COVID. as you remember well. We were um, in COVID. My wife had um, booked us an RV because wouldn't you know it, I can now work remotely, right? So we rented an RV and went down to Texas for about a month. And I worked from the back of an RV for a month and kind of proved out that I can work truly remotely. And so it got me thinking. At the same time in life, I had started getting into investing pretty heavily. And I said, okay, if we can work remotely, let's look for somewhere warmer, first and foremost. So you look at your usual suspects of anything down south, California, etc. And then I said, okay, I should back up. I'm a maximizer, so I'm always trying to maximize everything that I do. So I said, if I am going to go somewhere else besides Minnesota to work, to get out of the cold, you might as well be more tax efficient. So you look at a little bit more tax efficient states from a capital gains perspective, and you look at Texas and Florida are some of the usual suspects. And as I remember being up, doing dishes late at night with a probably a large beard for the first time in my life, and probably hadn't showered in days, and being on YouTube doing the dishes, and Puerto Rico pops up on YouTube, and I started down that rabbit hole of researching it, and they have an incredible program that made too much sense for us in our situation as an investor. That was the secondary reason. The first one was kind of a sense of adventure for our family, and going somewhere new and somewhere warmer for the winters.
Okay, so now that you're a resident of Puerto Rico, what give us some insight on what the experience has been like, and what kind of a community have you built there?
Sure. Well, the community here, first off, Puerto Rican culture has been great. The people down here, they're extremely warm. They don't get upset about too many things. They're very laid back, and there's, I don't know, it's just a very welcoming culture. And that's talking about the local Puerto Ricans. There are also a lot of people doing the exact same thing that we're doing, and those are your business owners, entrepreneurs, investors, a lot of like Amazon resellers, things like that fit this specific program that they have. And I can talk about the program if you'd like.
Yeah,
would that be helpful?
I think that'd be great. Yeah.
So Puerto Rico has a program. So actually, backing up, in 2018, Puerto Rico got hit with Hurricane Maria, completely annihilated. And their economy has been struggling significantly ever since. And so what they wanted to do is they wanted to get people down on island to stimulate the economy and spend money to prop that back up. And so they have a couple different tax programs. One is for individual investors, and it's like for capital gains. If you come down here, and you have to do quite a bit. There's an initial fee, and there's some charitable giving, and you have to purchase real estate within 2 years, etc. But they will offer you 0% capital gains for while you are down here. So if that fits you, it's pretty attractive. The other side is a business side. So if you have a business that has that is considered exporting services to outside of Puerto Rico, and so your income is coming outside of Puerto Rico, like for instance, if you're a consultant and you're consulting to U.S. companies, they will offer you 4% income tax, which is pretty substantial, and there's no federal tax either. So it's
A little different
very
than
appealing
Minnesota.
for the right situations.
Yeah, no, and as, for those of us that are, looking at the video here, I know a lot of people are going to be listening to this on the audio version, but we're getting the authentic experience here. We've got some birds chirping in the background. We've got the palm trees blowing in the wind in the background. It's looking pretty good. So, in addition to the economic and lifestyle kind of dynamic, it looks like a pretty good place to set up shop. So.
It does, yeah. And I should also talk about the other people who are down here. What I've enjoyed most is connecting with other individuals that are like-minded, because it takes a certain wiring of an individual to actually pick up and, you know, make the move to Puerto Rico for such a thing. And it's fascinating to just hear the stories of people and how they have, what has brought them down here, and what they do. There's um, the connections that I've made have, I never would have in my lifetime probably have made those back, um, you know, in the States, just because they're all so centralized. And, you know, we're in a community where a lot of families who are homeschooling and kind of doing the same thing, and also taking advantage of the tax program, are all together and driving around on golf carts and hanging out.
You mentioned something there. Just I think it's interesting for the audience. So, do the majority of families that relocate to Puerto Rico do they homeschool?
I'd say it's split. It's probably 50-50. There are some, really good schools close by. Um, there are a handful of families who do public school. A lot of them do a specific private school here, and they really like it. So we had gotten into homeschooling during the pandemic, and so we just chose to extend that on.
Okay, that's great. So, what's maybe before we get into the economic dynamic, what has been your favorite part of the move?
Oh man, from a family perspective, I think enjoying all that Puerto Rico has to offer. Going to and exploring a new beach every Saturday, and I think for our family, it's been a very bonding experience because we're all in it together and we're all experiencing it together. Um, Honestly, I think just tooling around and exploring new places on a golf cart. To be honest, it's been just really enjoyable. My kids love it.
Oh, very cool. I'm sure this will be a lifelong experience or experience that they will, your kids are going to look back from a frame of reference standpoint. I mean, it's amazing. So,
I hope so.
kudos to you guys for making the move. So let's circle back a little bit on your active income career. You mentioned private equity earlier in the episode. You've gotten a firsthand look at private equity in your role, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so the company that I work for, it was purchased by private equity, 4 years ago, and it it made me research this as, what's this? What is this? Private equity, because I'm wired as a learner, and understanding what it is and the economics of it has been very fascinating, especially for me, as I try to be grow in my investing knowledge, and the private equity dynamics. And you can probably chime in on some of this too, because I know that you've had some private uh, things as well, private investments and companies that have been owned like that. Um, Private equity is basically taking, buying businesses that are similar at a certain multiple of EBITDA, and putting them together, continuing the organic growth in those businesses, finding efficiencies where there are some savings. Sometimes it's on software, sometimes it's on personnel, but then packaging that together for a higher multiple of EBITDA, um, with increased growth of EBITDA at the same time. And it has been, this monster in our economy for quite a while now. but you really don't get exposed to it too much because, or until, you work for a company that gets purchased by one.
Yeah. To your point, a lot of us that have gone through or work for private equity companies, EBITDA becomes a second nature word. And just for the audience's understanding, EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. A lot of the companies you work for, if depending on where you've worked, you talk about revenue or margin. But EBITDA becomes a household name or household word when you're working in the private equity space. So we appreciate you giving us some context on that. Dan, when you brought this up earlier, you've really expanded and accelerated your career and your earnings over the years. And one thing I really appreciate about the story you told was it's 18 years, right? And a lot of people think everything's an overnight success story. And the fact that you've been committed to this craft and, for 18 years really, really says something. In addition to that, it's allowed you to grow your active income to the point where you can invest in, let's call it maybe some unique or alternative assets that, maybe aren't your standard stock market, your standard 401k. And the first one that I want to bring up is cryptocurrency. You and I have talked about cryptocurrency at length over a few bonfires and a few seltzers over the years. So why don't you just back up a little bit and give us some context? Like, how did you get involved in cryptocurrency or introduced to cryptocurrency, and what has that journey been like since then?
Sure. I was first introduced to cryptocurrency. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was I was out seeing a customer in New York, and I saw one of my old buddies from college because he was living out there as well. We sat down, we had sushi, and he told me about this thing called Bitcoin. And the year was 2012. I think Bitcoin then was, I don't know what it was. It was like $100 or something. It's just super, super cheap compared to today.
Let's just stop right there. I think this is important for the audience. So when you say $100 per coin, right? $100 per Bitcoin at that time.
I would have to check to see what it was, but it was a very, very small magnitude or small percentage of what it is today.
So just so the audience understands, as we sit here today, what is Bitcoin trading at ballpark?
I think it's at 63,000 per Bitcoin.
So we're about $62,900 above the ballpark price, where you were at least having initial discussions around. So it's come a little ways here in 12 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So the closing price for Bitcoin in 2012 was $13.45 per Bitcoin, and today it's 63,000.
So it's safe to say that if I offered you 200 per Bitcoin, you probably wouldn't take it. Is that a fair assessment?
No, probably not. No. But here's the story. Did I invest then? I remember leaving that conversation like, yeah, I should, take some money and invest in that. I'm going to do that. Except I'm in, salesman, and ADD got the best of me, and I went back to life. But what that did, though, is it planted a seed, and as I continued to hear about Bitcoin over the years, I would take special note of it. And one thing that I've learned over the years is it takes on average, about 100 hours of research and hearing about cryptocurrency until someone actually, gets comfortable and makes a move on average. I don't know where the research came from, but I had heard that, and I believe it. So I started to look into it, and I continue to hear more. And I didn't start until Bitcoin was like at 3,000, and I didn't buy very much even then. In hindsight, I wish that I would have purchased more. But since then, you keep slowly adding, and it's performed well. It's actually the best performing asset class for a long time now. So, and a quiz to you, Mr. Dustin. What do you think the market cap of Bitcoin currently is?
I'm not sure I even want to guess, Dan, to be honest. I mean, what you must have the answer.
$1.2 trillion
Wow.
Can you? It just boggles my mind. So, needless to say, we've seen a tremendous amount of adoption recently in that space, and I think one of the biggest things that was helpful for it was the authorization of the ETFs that we see that give, you know, it gives people the ability to purchase Bitcoin without actually needing to go through and self custody it, and it's, also kind of a blessing by the SEC in a roundabout way, because they had to approve it.
So,
So
and again, just the acronym ETF stands for Exchange Traded Fund, and so that's essentially what you're saying, Dan. Is it pretty much brought Bitcoin into the mainstream for the average, let's call it retail investor, to get involved without having to put 100 hours of,
yeah,
research in. So,
yep,
okay.
yep. So that's been a journey, and I think one thing that I've learned with it, again, this is not financial advice, and nor am I a financial advisor, but it's been really helpful to through this whole process to understand our history of money in America, and learning about fiat. I didn't know what fiat was growing up. I didn't know about us moving off the gold standard. Some of those basic fundamental blocks that when you see the money supply expanding, make Bitcoin very attractive. Now, again, what I've learned through all of this too is that something only has value because people have consensus that it has value. And so, whether it's a dollar bill, a gold bar, or a coconut, it's. But I think that we're seeing a lot of consensus that the Bitcoin network is a valid play for a store of value at minimum.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think this comes back to, you mentioned that you're not a financial advisor, and we mentioned the disclaimers at the start of this, right? Where this is for informational purposes only, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
for advice. But I think the one thing that we continue to stress here at Chasing Goalpost is if you're going to get into some of these investments, make sure you understand them, right? And make
Mm-hmm.
sure you do your due diligence and understand them. So as things, no market goes up forever. I know you've seen some heavy swings north and south on Bitcoin, and just making sure you understand the fundamentals. It helps you obviously stay in the game, or make moves accordingly to add more or reduce your position. So, it's just another good piece of information to say if you're going to get into some of these assets, really any assets, we should be doing our due diligence and make sure we understand them.
Absolutely. Yep. And if someone was looking to get into it and research it, I would start to understand, what a Bitcoin halving is. I won't get into that in detail, but the term halving, and really how Bitcoin is kind of a finite asset, and understand the system that they use for that to see if you're comfortable with that. Don't gamble on it. Understand the technology first before getting into it.
Yeah. We appreciate that information. So kind of elaborating on that, there's some other alternative assets that you've, I think, evaluated or engaged in the past, and that's been angel investing. And so I got two questions for you as it relates to angel investing. Number one is, what is angel investing in your opinion, right? So the audience kind of understands what angel investing means. And can you share with us any opportunities that you've evaluated? Obviously not sharing company names, but just opportunities, industries, and so forth.
Sure. I would consider angel investing just investing in early stage companies. And when I say early stage, I mean someone with an idea and not much more than that. A lot of times, when an entrepreneur has an idea, the first people that they go to are friends and family. And they exhaust their network of friends and family. And then typically the angel investor is the next set of people, if they're not already in that network of friends and family. But it's really a lot of what you see on Shark Tank is angel investing. Some of it's a little bit further down the down the line they've had rounds of investing, and it's maybe a second or third round, but typically angel investing is in one of the first rounds of money raising for a new company. And some of the investments that I've done for as far as angel investing are companies that are trying to do new things. One example would be is for medication, for controlling your medication while you have cancer. So if you're a cancer patient and you have certain drugs that you have to take, and those drugs, if you don't take them, it can kill you or send you back to the hospital. Or if you take it twice, it can kill you or send you to the hospital. So that's an inherent issue, and not complying with taking those medications leads to a substantial amount of cost for healthcare systems, let alone patient health and their success. So I would look at companies that would have maybe a device to make sure that a patient has taken their pill, will maybe only dispense one pill per day, and report back to the doctor and pharmacy to make sure that has happened. So that if it hasn't happened, that they can be contacting the patient and things like that. And then expanding out into how else can you use a device like that? Can you put surveys on it to say, how are you feeling after this? Are you and putting specific things to their care program to report back to their doctors, instead of having nurses and things making phone calls all the time. Another one would be to measure and track heart flow to see if your arteries are too constricted. Today, in the angiography space, they have to do a lot of like wire guides to kind of push ink and things through in order for them to capture heart flow on angiography machines. And so I would look at a company that would say, instead of having to do this invasive procedure, how can we use AI and 3D modeling to basically reconstruct those vessels and run sample blood flows through those reconstructions and have them be as accurate as what exists today, and to save tons again to the patient, to the healthcare system, all around. Another one would be to look at Uber has revolutionized the transport world, and to take that concept and to say what other industries can we apply that to. One that really intrigued me was taking it to our cargo ships and to say these big bulk tankers, how can we Uberize them? It's a very old, antiquated, kind of good old boys industry. And how can you do that better and gain a competitive advantage by, tracking the ships better and also connecting, the buyers and sellers, connecting them instead of using some of the brokers like they have in the past.
So it feels and it sounds like this is where innovation, these companies where innovation is really born, right? It's tech, heavy innovation. And ultimately, these companies want to build up their revenues and their margins to the point where larger, more established businesses would probably step in and acquire, or private equity firms for that matter.
Yes. Yeah. And maybe it'd be good for the viewers to hear, kind of what the goal is, for those startup companies. From your experience, what have you seen? When you start up a company with an idea, at what point are they trying, or how do they decide, when they're going to exit that investment, and at what level?
Yeah, I think it depends on the company. I mean, as you know, I've been a part of a startup in the past, and the the runway is always different for everybody. Sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's five. In private equity, it seems to be 5 to 7 once you get into that private equity space. But I think once you start to see scale and market scalability slash adoption, I think is really when you start to see the larger players start to take notice, right? Early stage, you're kind of bootstrapping things, you're trying to get the word out, you know, maybe build a bit of call it a blue ocean, right? The blue ocean strategy. You probably read that book. And then as it gets to kind of the more commonplace scalability and let's call it market adoption. When I say market adoption, I think it's going to be mass market adoption. Once we get to that mass market adoption, whatever it means in the industry that you're in, I think that's when the acquisition phase starts to become reality.
Cool.
So as you've gone through a lot of things here, and with your experiences and your active income career, you've obviously done a lot of investing. If I was to ask you what's one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self today, what would that be?
Mm. Um, I've thought about this a lot, and I think that I would, from an investing standpoint, because again, that's the goal of this podcast, I would understand equity and investing in equity at a much younger age. I didn't get that until I was well into my 30s. I thought that I was being a good boy by living well beneath my means and maxing out my 401k. Um, you know, and that I'm not saying not to contribute to your 401k because that's good, but you actually can do yourself a disfavor if you do too much. Um, uh, so I would look at alternative investments at a much earlier age if I were to do it again. And I think I would I would have definitely taken my friend's advice on Bitcoin a lot earlier too.
Hindsight's 2020, as we say, right? So no,
Amen.
I echo your comments there. The timing dynamic. Time is something none of us can get back, and so our parents and people that we've looked up to have told us, "Oh, you should be investing at an earlier age," and now we're saying that to the generations before us. So, kind of a consistency here. One more question, similar question, but we ask all of our guests here on the Chasing Goalpost podcast, and that is, what is Dan Shrek chasing?
It's a good question. I think if you would have asked me at different stages in my life, you'd receive very different answers. Um, I think today I'm chasing being able to have financial freedom so that I can really invest in my kids. I view being a father um, as something where I think that some of the most critical years where they're going to need, my wisdom and help and training. Like my wife, she is their teacher today, does a fantastic job. I don't know if I'd ever be able to do it like she does. Um, but being able to free myself up for um, those formative years in late high school and college, and if they want to start a business, to be right by their side to do that, and to have the means to let them achieve, the goal, any of those goals that they want, and to really help them identify what are their giftings, and to use the business knowledge that I've gained to help them not have to wait until they're in their 30s to learn things. Um, I think that's really what I'm chasing now, and I'm, you know, heads down, doing my job, selling, and living beneath our means, and investing so that we can make that happen. That's at least what I'm chasing.
No, we appreciate the feedback on that. A lot of people will say financial freedom, but the next dynamic or the next step in that is why, right? And you kind of took us through the why. So we appreciate the context on that for sure. And, how important that is for you and your family. It's not just so you can sit on the beach in Puerto Rico and sip margaritas, right? It's to ultimately give your kids the opportunity that you want them to have.
Yeah, I think in in my life, my faith and my and the people in my church have been huge in my formative years. And one thing that I learned has been, you look through the whole Bible. There's no word for retirement ever. There's just change. And in your earlier years, you're giving your labor. In your later years, you're giving your wisdom. And so it's how can I give my wisdom, to in the best way possible in those later years.
Well said, my friend. So as we wind things down here, number one, I want to thank you for your time today. I mean, shared some amazing wisdom. Talking about wisdom, you shared some great wisdom here today. I mean, we've gone through building a successful active income career, utilizing that active income to expand your investing knowledge and your investing horizon with alternative assets, and then, you know, taking the adventure to move yourself and your family to a Caribbean island we call Puerto Rico. So if anybody wanted to get a hold of Dan Schreck, via social media or online, what would be the best way to do so?
I would hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm probably the only Dan Schreck that is in Puerto Rico. I can confidently say that.
Okay. Well, and just for the audience's understanding, we will link your LinkedIn profile to the show notes when we go live with this. So everybody can just click on the link quickly and get access to your profile and can reach out. So again, man, we're going to wind this down. Thank you again for everything today. If there's anything you want to say before we conclude, I'm going to give you the floor here.
Now, I just want to thank you for having me on. Look forward to visiting back this summer and having some nice bonfires. And yeah, thanks for having me on. Hope we can do it again.
Absolutely. We should definitely do that. We will look forward to seeing you soon, my friend.
All right. Take care, bud.